Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, students. Welcome to another method of TEFL. Today we are here to move on with our teaching methods. Remember what did we do last week? Remember that? Yes. We started TEFL. All right. Fine. Do you know what does TEFL stand for? Oh, you all know it. Yes. Who would tell me? Yes, tell me. Teaching of English as a foreign language? Yes. Good. Good. All right. What else we talked about so far? We talked about scope of TEFL. We talked about different methods for foreign language. All right? Fine. Which method we finished discussing last week? Grammar translation method. All right. GTM. And I told you that we would start the next method. Fine. Do you have any question? Yeah? Have you got it? Have you read? All right. Some of you want to see the book title. Okay, I can show you the book. I have got the book. Students, here is the book that you can see. This book is Techniques and Principles in Language Teaching by Diane Larson Freeman. It's a book, and we are following this book and other books that I have already given you in our first lecture, in our introductory lecture. Remember that? Okay. So, I hope you all have read the first chapter, you all have read the introduction, and you all have Googled out information on TEFL so far. Yes, are you doing it? That's good. It's a good approach. Students, keep on doing, because it's a very important course. I already told you. Remember that? Okay. So, which method? Direct method today. Okay. Yes, somebody is asking question. What is that? You want to know some flaws. Flaws of what? Of grammar translation method. Good. I knew you would ask this question. It's a very good question. Yes? Who else had the same question? Yes, Ali? Alright. Ali has the same question. Zia raised this question. Yes? Mustafa has also the same question. Okay, yes, your question is valid. That before we proceed, we need to know what are the flaws. What is the need of this method? We have discussed grammar translation method, right? And we talked about in that method that, well, translation is there, right? And what else? We use mother tongue to learn foreign language, right? So we discussed that, well, to learn a foreign language in grammar translation method, this translation, or in other words, MT. You know MT? Mother tongue. Mother tongue mediates between what? Yes, between the target language, right, that you want to learn. So mother tongue in fact helps. This translation is there. And that's why we call it grammar translation method, that the learner learns English and the teacher in fact teaches that language, teaches English. How? With the help of this mother tongue, meaning your native language. So that is what the grammar translation method is there. And your question is valid, that what are in fact what? See, the flaws. So today, before we move on to today's method, that is direct method, we will talk about the flaws. So if I give you the review of this in the previous lecture, yes, lecture 3, what did we talk about that? Principles. Who would tell me 2 principles? Yes, role of a teacher, fine, goal of a teacher. Alright, which other principles? Right, other principles, fine, memorization, remember that? Right, grammar. Fine, that of course deductively in fact the grammar rules are taught. Remember that? and we also use some techniques. What were the techniques? Composition writing. Fine. Different activities were used, and we talked about those activities in detail. Right? We had in-depth discussion. In fact, we had a detailed discussion on the principles of GTM. How many principles we talked about? 4. Now 5. No. Yeah. Again, you know, in GTM, what teacher does? He says no. So I am a GTM teacher because I'm reviewing that lecture. Fine. So in grammar translation method, my dear students, we talked about 9 principles. Fine. So we had a detailed discussion on those principles, and then we discussed what? Techniques. And again, the classroom proceeding was there. You remember that we read what? A passage on Mississippi by Mark Twain. Very good. Yes, Mark Twain. Who is Mark Twain? Yes, short story writer. All right, he is an American short story writer. Good. So that was all that we covered, and today, yes, see on the slide, flaws of GTM. What are the problems, right, of grammar translation method? You know, definitely we try to move. We want, in fact, to have a better system. This is what the human nature. Fine, you try to move from what? See, you always need improvement. So whenever there is a problem, you try to find the problem, and then you see once you identify a problem, then you suggest some solutions. Why we suggest some solutions? So that we can improve our life. So since we have to, in fact, learn a language, we have to teach a foreign language. So earlier, the method that we used was grammar translation method, and you all remember that method was introduced to what? Right? To be able to read what? Literature of classical languages, right? Classical Greek, classical Latin, in fact. So that method was introduced to teach those languages. And why those languages? Because those are the classical languages. Of course, European literature, in fact, you see, when you read European literature, you will find references of what? The classics. So that method was introduced for the purpose particularly. So we had a discussion on that, but today we'll see that what are the flaws, of course, of the method. And the roadmap, again, what is that? Yes, the roadmap, mean the way. Another word is, what is roadmap? Agenda. Yes, students? Today what is our agenda? Alright, see? Or what are our important points to be covered in this lecture? Which lecture, students? 5th lecture? No. Which lecture? 4th lecture. Today we are here for the 4th time, dear students. What we talk about? We will talk about flaws of what? GTM. I hope you know what does GTM stand for. Grammar Translation Method. See? And then we'll start another method, very important method, right? That is what? Direct method. And then we'll talk about techniques of direct method. So today you need to know, yes, because why I emphasize, why I want you to know, because once you know these points, then things become easy for you. Got it? Why? Because once you create a folder in your memory that, well, today in this lecture, I need to know what? Flaws. And mind you, these flaws are important. As a tip for you, as far as your exam is concerned, these flaws are also important. You need to know what are the flaws. Clear? Flaws of what? Of grammar translation method. And your observation is very valid. I appreciate you for this very good question. I expected this question, and on purpose I didn't touch this area last week, right? So I, in fact, waited for your responses. This shows that you people are putting efforts, you people are working hard, and this is really good thing. And I'm sure that you will be good TEFL instructors, TEFL teachers, TEFL, right, consultants, fine? But for that, again, the old say, I would say, you have to take pains. You have to work really hard. You have to, you see, yes, what should I say? Work. How many hours you should work? 2 hours? All right, not bad. You can work for 2 hours, but mind you, regularly, every day. Fine? So work regularly and you will see the change and you will be a good teacher. So, move on today. Yes, any queries? What's the question? All right. This question is, what is GTM? Oh yes, I told you, but again, fine, a method of what? Method of foreign language. What? Teaching. Yeah. And what happens in this method? You see, where grammar and translation are the main activities. Fine. And generally, and I ask you one thing. What's that? I ask you to visit a class. And I hope you done. Yes, yes. Varis raised his hand. He believes that he has visited class. See, his face is shining. Good, Varis. It's a good job, right? So once you visit a class, and you can compare with the class that we had, an ideal class. Fine. The class where the teacher teaches and the teacher gives what? Passages to the students and the student read. I'm talking about that. See? So Mississippi, that a short story. Fine? A passage. Clear? So yes, my dear students, observation is a very important part. Once you observe a class, then you come to know, fine, what happens in the class. And that's why, of course, your writer, the Larson also, in every method, what he does, that he in fact he takes you to a class where that method is practically being exploited. So once you see that method, once you see the teacher, once you see the drills in the class, once you see the activities in the class, so what do? Remind you again. See, the principle and activities, and these two both make what? Your method. I hope you understand. So again, the principle is what? An invisible thought. Fine? Whatever the activity is, so there is a principle behind. Remember that when being a teacher, whenever you will design an activity, so keep this in mind, that there must be a principle behind that. Yes? Clear? No? Any confusion? Alright, I tell you, for example, the activity is, for example, what you give. For example, in grammar translation method, you have seen that the teacher gives them a list of words. So what is the principle behind? What is the principle behind? Guess it. What is it? Vocabulary. Alright, fine, good, of course. And second one, the teacher, in fact, gives them rules. Which rules? Grammatical rules, and the student learn those rules. In fact, again, what is the principle? The grammar. Is that clear? So dear students, yes, this is that whatever activity you design, and again, you need to be creative in designing activities. Fine? You need to be creative. You need to design good activities if you want to be very good teacher, if you want to stand alone among teachers, fine, if you want to be the best TEFL consultant, so you need to, right, be creative, think, fine, and design activities. So that is what the point that you should keep in mind, that you should need to be creative if you want to be an excellent TEFL teacher. So today, what we talk about, the flaws, what are the weaknesses of grammar translation method, GTM, again you know that, and what is in fact mean. We will introduce to direct method, and then what are the techniques of direct method. Fine, students. So let's start today's lecture. I have given you an overview of the previous lecture. In the previous lecture, my dear students, we talked about 9 principles. How many principles? 9 principles, and also activities. What are the techniques of grammar translation method? And then, of course, with every technique, there is a invisible principle behind, and you need to know that principle. When you design activity, yes, you are teacher, you must know that. Let's move on, students. Here, the flaws. what are the flaws in fact? See, what? Explicit grammar rule based teaching. Oh my God, what is grammar? I told you once, grammar is what? Grammar rules? Alright. If you see the old definition of grammar, my dear students, it is derived from Latin. From the word was the grammatica, and the grammatica meant to write. This is the old definition. In fact, later on the definition of grammar has changed. For example, now modern theorists, they talk about descriptive grammar and they talk about prescriptive grammar, you know. Difficult terms? No difficult. You know it, in fact, in your linguistics you might have covered, my dear students. Descriptive grammar is, of course, the grammar which is used by the users. Is that clear? The rule which is the rule which is used by the speakers. Mind you, the speakers are important. Here I want to give you an idea that what is the idea? Who are important? The users, the speaker, or the language? Who are important? No answer. Try. Rack your brains. Think a while. See, no answer. Alright, users are important. Very good. Yeah, of course. So my dear students, yeah, we in fact speak language. Language does not speak us. You want me to say it again? Yeah, dear students, we speak the language. Language does not speak us. Fine. So dear students, that's why descriptive grammar. Which grammar? Descriptive grammar. The grammar which is used by the users, that is. And then again, prescriptive grammar. Which grammar? Prescriptive. When you, from the word, you know, you go to a doctor, yeah? See, you see a doctor, for example, you are not well, you are ailing, you have sickness, for example. So what do? Yeah? How many of you, are you all right? I hope you all are fine. Okay. So maybe if you fall ill, what do? You visit a doctor. You see a doctor, and the doctor, what does he do? He gives you medicines. He prescribes you medicine, in fact. So is the case, my dear students, here, right? So in this prescriptive grammar, a grammarian, he prescribes rule, in fact. So we saw in this GTM, right? So in that, what teacher does, he uses which method? Deductive method, in fact. The term is new for you. Deduction. Again, I tell you, my dear students, what is deduction? Deduction is what? Yeah, in deduction is, yeah, when the teacher gives them rules. For example, right, subject, right, third person singular, then plus the verb, plus s or es, plus object. See? So even some teachers, what they do, they give formulas. While teaching tenses, you might have attended, you must have attended the classes where the teachers, in fact, write some rules. And even in Urdu as well. Ta hai, ti hai, te hai. Remember that? Of course, in school life, some public schools particularly, what the teachers, they give them rules. That a sentence that ends, wo jumla jiska ikhtatam ta hai ya ti hai se ho, to usko hum present simple. You understand? So, see? So, what rules dete hain? So that is, there is all explicit grammar rules based teaching, where rules are given, fine, the teacher gives rules first, and then he expects students, he asks students to what? To practice those. And this is called deductive method, where rules are given first, and then you learn to apply those rules. Yes, students, I hope you are clear. So this is one of the flaws, that well, the rules are given, the grammar is taught explicitly, in fact. Again, you can raise a question, why? It is because, the grammar is what rules. My dear students, well, if you see around, you can ask yourself, you can ask your friends, you can ask your colleagues, you will find out people that maybe they are good at grammar, they may know the rules, but when it comes to speaking, when it comes to applied linguistics, they are failures. They cannot perform well. So the point is, why is it so? Right? Where does the fault lie? The answer is, my dear students, that teach the teaching, of course, right? So whenever there is a problem, we try to find out the causes of that problem. Every cause, there is an effect. So people are not good at speaking, they cannot express themselves well. A lot of people, of course, they have done their bachelor's, they have got 14 years of education, and even they started their English, for example, in class 6, even now class 1 as well. So after studying a subject for 14 years, still, if you go to National University of Modern Languages for a certificate or diploma, so it means that the 14 years, you have done that subject for 14 years, but still you are unable to use that language. And if you are unable to use that language, so what is the, you see, fine? So what is the purpose of having those 14 years? The point is that the speaking is very important. I hope you understand. Yes, you are with me. So dear students, so I mean, explicit grammar, rules-based teaching is there. This is one of the flaws, right? Because people know rules, and maybe, I mean, again, you cannot retain those rules. How many of you know the Urdu grammar rules? No? We all speak Urdu, we all speak Punjabi, we all speak Saraiki, but we don't know the rules of that language. Clear? I hope you understand. You look happy today. Fine, good. So this is one of the flaws. Second flaw, of course, means, if you see that, what? A memorization, right? Rather than a meaningful learning. What is memorization, by the way? What is memorization? You know that? No? Memorization. You learn things by heart. You memorize things. Is it a good thing? No? Yeah, I mean, memorize, of course, we say that we should not commit things to memory because we cannot memorize things, you know. We are not parrots, in fact. The parrot learning, for example. The teacher says, okay, learn this essay by heart. And, you know, that famous example, see, that maybe some students, they learn that essay by heart, my best friend. Fine? And sometimes even the essay, I mean, in the exam, the teacher gives them, see, my father, in fact. So some students, what they do, they change that essay, my best friend, to my father, in fact. And again, for example, that Ali is my best friend, and of course I have many friends, but Ali is my best friend. Now what the teacher does, I mean, the student follows that practice. What he does, says, I have many fathers, but so and so is my best father. I hope you understand. This is just a joke I want to share with you, that, you know, because this is the point. Why? The students have memorized that essay, my best friend, and once the question comes in the exam, that write an essay on my father. So people, in fact, the students, what they do, they take those sentences and try to incorporate in this personality, my father. Anyway, so this is what means that the method, of course, grammar translation method, it stresses on, it focuses on memorization, and I hope you are convinced that, I mean, memorization, of course, people who have this, I mean, who learn things through this way, I mean, they are in the habit of cramming things. They cannot perform well. Many a times you might have observed, you might have experienced, right? कि एक मुकर्रर ने तकरीर याद की है ज़ुबानी, in fact. And when he comes to speak, and if he forgets, अगर वो भूल जाए, तो what happens with that? उसके लिए बहुत मुश्किल होता है. I hope you understand. So that's why this grammar translation method focuses on memorization. So it's, and then that of course the point is that, I mean, this is a language. It's a huge area. How many things would you memorize? Every situation demands, of course, a different language expressions. So how many expressions would you memorize? So, I mean, we cannot memorize everything. So when it comes to use, so we should not memorize. This is, in fact, my dear students, of course, one of the flaws that is there in GTM, of course. Then, again, my dear, of course, I told you how many skills? Reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And this method focuses on, yes, all right. See, writing and reading. Very good. You saw that in the class, where the teacher makes students read, and they read one by one, they read. Fine. And what they do? They write. Right? So what is there? There is no listening. No listening. Right? and then there's no speaking. Why? Because the method ignores, which method? Grammar translation method. Very good, students. So this method ignores, what does it ignore? Speaking and listening. Very important. I mean, definitely when you want to learn a language, so you need to learn full skills. But this method, though, I mean, yes, we are learning foreign language, but we are learning only 2 skills. Which 2 skills? Mean writing and reading. What do we call them? Literacy skills. Is that clear? So dear students, this is what the situation is, that, I mean, this method ignores, in fact, does not focus much on your speaking and listening skills, right? And if the method ignores listening skills, it means all the sub skills of listening is also ignored. But our sub skills of listening, we'll talk about it later. Fine? Hold on. Okay, again, have you seen any, I mean, in this situation, that a teacher corrects pronunciation? No. Good, fine, good observation. Well, this is another, my dear student, a flaw, another weakness of this method, that pronunciation is ignored. Again, it's a very important part, right? For a good language learner, for a good even language teacher, pronunciation is important, right? What is it? Pronunciation. What is it? Phonetics, phone, study of sounds, right? Tics, phonetics, science of sounds, how you articulate. And I'm sure you have done this subject, phonetics and phonology, and you are familiar with that, right? It's a very important subject. Again, for a good teacher, for a good TEFL teacher, yes, we need to know phonetics, and again, particularly articulatory phonetics, how to articulate. So I was telling you, my dear students, that, well, this method ignores listening skill, ignores speaking skills, which means all the sub skills are also ignored. So this is another flaw, that only 2 skills are highlighted, only 2 skills are focused, whereas, I mean, we cannot be a proficient language speaker unless we know all the 4 skills. Fine? This is another, what we call them? Another defect that we have. Okay, another defect. What is it? Yeah, no communication. See? Oh, I mean, the students do their work individually, in fact, right? And the teacher monitors them, in fact. So, no student, no communication. If I ask you, why is it so? Can you answer my question? Yes? Okay? Because it is not the, oh, very good, very good. It is not the purpose of this method. Yeah, you remember that. Good. Good, Zishan. Well done. Keep it up. Right? That it is not the purpose of this method. So since it is not the purpose of this method, so how? See, the method. So this method, in fact, again, does not, focus on what? Communication. So no interaction. And even teacher does not encourage interaction, right? The teacher, what? See, he is the knowledge provider. He is all in all in this method. Remember that. So teacher feels that, well, he is what? That danda bardar teacher. Remember that? So he has that danda. No rod, but maybe, of course, that he is a language teacher. But the point is, the method that he follows is grammar translation method. And what he does, he in fact does not encourage. What do you think? Will you encourage that? Yeah. Again, the point is that when you are there to teach a foreign language and there is no interaction, students are not allowed to interact. Fine? Whatever interaction takes place, through the teacher it takes place. And the teacher does everything. He is all in all in this method. So of course there is no communication, no interaction, and even the resource person, even the teacher does not motivate students for interaction. Again, you are very right. I appreciate you that it is not the purpose of this method. So again, the flaw, what is that? Oh, good. Teacher-oriented class. I have mentioned earlier that, well, the teacher is reservoir of knowledge. What is reservoir? How do you spell reservoir? R-E-S-E-R-V-O-I-R. Yes, reservoir. What is reservoir, by the way? Reservoir of knowledge, you know. He knows everything. He has knowledge, right? So the teacher is a reservoir of knowledge. Fine, he is a knowledge provider. Fine, he does not encourage interaction. He just provides them. He gives them the rules. He gives them the vocabulary items. He gives them the activities, in fact. Clear? So, knowledge provider, reservoir of knowledge, and he has full command in the class, right? So, this is, what do you call this class? Teacher-oriented class. And what is the opposite of this? Who would tell me? Yes? What is? Oh, good. Student-centered class, where the students are highlighted. They are focused, of course. So in this, which method? Grammar translation method. My students does what? It? Yes. Very good. Very good. It is a teacher-centered. Who is a teacher, by the way? The one who teaches. Fine. Right? And the one who encourages students. But here, no encouragement. You see? And if a student makes a mistake, again, yeah, I mean, his feelings are not dealt. Fine? No, wrong answer. I'll give you the right answer. See, who says this? The teacher. Alright. So, the class is, my dear students, which centered? Teacher-centered class. Fine. Shall we move on? Okay. Now, the flaw is, you know that, student feelings and pace of learning ignored, in fact. Okay, that feelings are not dealt with. They are not considered. Fine? They are not given due consideration, my dear students. Fine? So this is another flaw of this method, that their feelings are not, in fact, positively dealt with. Fine? Positively managed. Fine? The wrong answer, a right answer is provided. Fine? And the students, of course, when you, I mean, your answer is ignored or rejected, how you feel, in fact. It happens in the class when your answer is rejected by the teacher, that it's a wrong answer, I have the right answer, so you feel dejected. Fine? So when it happens with you, you know that, I mean, you feel that this is not the right way, but you are the student there, and you just don't say anything, but you do mind it. Anyway, this is another flaw. And then focus on accuracy and correctness, mind you. Fine? No fluency. It is believed that, I mean, we focus on fluency and accuracy come later on. But now, this method says accurate. Try to be accurate, in fact. So, the method focuses on accuracy and correctness. Fluency is given. Alright. Second priority. Just try to be. Even, yes, see, I should correct myself, that, well, fluency is not given any priority. Here, my dear students, correct. And of course, again, who would determine the correction? Again, who? The knowledge provider. Who is the knowledge provider? Yes, Mohit? The teacher. Alright, which class is this? Teacher-centered class. Very good. And how we teach? How the teacher teaches grammar? Okay, through what? Deduction. Is that clear? Mean explicit. You know what explicit word? Explicit mean. Opposite is implicit. Again, the teacher gives antonyms and synonyms, in fact. So clear. Explicit mean clear, of course. Right? Rules are given, and the students, the poor students, they have to know those rules. First, they have to know the formula of that, and then he has to use that formula in different sentences. These are some flaws, of course, of this method that are there. Clear? You understand? Even some people criticize this method as well. Right? There is criticism on this method, that maybe this method, of course, this talking about this grammar translation method, that this method, in fact, does not help student, right, in speaking the language. And why this method is a failure? Because the people, of course, it helps the learner, of course. It teaches the target language with the help of mother tongue. So mother tongue always interferes, my dear students. Mother tongue always interferes. Like simple example, if you should take example of English and Urdu. A sentence in English, what is the sentence pattern? Right? For example, I give you a sentence. I write a letter. So who I? A subject. What is write? Yes, verb, a letter. Object, for example. Clear? Subject, verb and object. Now see English. मैंने खत लिखा. अब क्या हुआ, मैंने खत लिखा, may, what is may by the way, right? File, लिखा, verb है ना, लिखा, and then खत, मफूल. तो क्या हो गया यहाँ, subject, object and verb, SOV. अब देखिए दो लैंग्वेजेस का सेंटेंस पैटर्न भी मुख्तलिफ है, डिफरेंट है. Two languages have a different what sentence pattern. So these are the things that of course tell us that we need to have another method. Clear? All right. So these are, students, are the flaws, and I hope you are clear with these laws. The flaws are there, that grammar is taught explicitly, memorization is highlighted, speaking and listening are ignored, no pronunciation, no interaction, right? Teacher is all in all, and all that. These are some flaws of which method, students? Grammar translation method. Should I move on? Any questions? Yes. What is the question? Okay, what do I mean by teacher-centered class? Okay, good question. All right. Well, students, yes, it's a good question. That a teacher-centered class is a class where teacher is authority. Teacher claims that he has power. He knows everything, in fact. Fine. He is the knowledge provider. Fine. And where, of course, that the students are not encouraged to interact. Fine. Whatever activity takes place, it takes place through the teacher, in fact. So that is the class, we call it teacher-centered class. And opposite of this is student-centered class. Now it's up to you which class you want to have. Do you want to have a teacher-centered class, or you want to have a student-centered class? Maybe if you are tired and you want just teacher to speak and you want to be quiet, then it's okay. Then you might favor teacher-centered class, that he should come and he should deliver lecture, and maybe at the back you are dozing. Fine? You want this class, or you want a class where teacher asks you a question, teacher makes you interact and all that? You want that class? Yes, good. That's all right. These are some flaws are there of what? GTM. Again, what are the factors that led to the rejection? Again, this method has been rejected. Fine. Of course, now when the teachers, in fact, the theorists have rejected this method. And again, why this method has been rejected, we need to have some grounds. I hope you understand. Whenever you reject something, you should have some arguments with that. That why you reject this method. Maybe you feel that you are good at this method because you have done your metric, you have done your inter, you have done your graduation through this method. So why this method stands rejected? Fine. There are some factors, and the flaws are also there. And you know the flaws. Yes, students. Clear? So flaws are there, and you know those flaws. And again, the flaws are there, and then see other factors that, of course. These students, move on. First factor, right? What is it? See that, of course, why that the method has been rejected. See, the point is, if you see increased opportunities for communication among Europeans, a demand for oral proficiency in foreign language. My dear student, the purpose of language is to communicate to the world. Is that clear? The purpose of language is to communicate in different situations, whereas this method, in fact, focuses on memorization, of course. So globalization wants what? You have to communicate with the world. Whereas this method, of course, does not, in fact, encourage interaction, right? So this method, in fact, focuses on the translation and what the mother tongue use of language. So again, when you have to communicate to the world, so this method does not help you much, right? This method, of course, doesn't help you. So that's again is a factor that this method was rejected, because if I have already given you a lot of examples that people even have a master's degree sometime. Of course, master's degree, they cannot, in fact, communicate in this language. It's very common, the practice that you might have seen, and of course, and even in our country particularly, of course, you can see sometime, of course, a grade 17 officer, he has, done bachelor's, and after that maybe he has done that the Public Service Commission, but still when it comes to language, he cannot speak that language. So, since he has to communicate to the world, and I have seen so many, even some grade 17 officers, even mind you, CSS officers sometimes, they are not proficient in the language. Why? Because they have gone through the grammar translation method, and then there was a translation and there was no focus on proficiency. And they attend particularly these presentations, of course, and the courses on language skills where they improve. And particularly when they have to go on foreign missions, right, over there they struggle, in fact, because of this proficiency. So that's why this method was one reason. Second, in fact, again, language teaching specialists, for example, yes, the way modern languages were being taught in secondary schools. Another, of course, means that way the moving on, that how we teach language in, of course, in different schools, right, in commercial schools, in fact, where that's what the focus on this, the target language, instead of using that, of course, mother tongue. So again, that was a factor that, in fact, you see, that gave us that room that this method is no more in. And then again, new approaches of teaching languages, of course, are developed by of course, teaching specialists, in fact. So that's why the new approaches are there, and even then research was done on new approaches, and these new approaches were more successful than this GTM. So if you have a better way, so why should you go on with the old way, in fact? If you feel that this other methods are doing well, their progress is better, the learner becomes more proficient in that target language, so why should we stick to that old method, considering कि हमारी mother tongue है और में ये help करती है? In fact, this is one. फिर we are in fact not meeting our goals. The goals, of course, to speak that language. So that's why these are some factors, of course, they are. Now moving on. Well, students, which method today? Before here, if I just show you one screen here, what is it? Well, students, so there's a picture in front of you. What does it show, by the way? Can you see it? A teacher is there and students are there, and he is interacting with the students. Alright, so, and at the back you see what? Direct method. So today, my dear students, we are going to start this method, that is direct method. So far we talked about the flaws and factors that led to the rejection of this method. So we are moving on to this method, that is what? Direct method. Again, the question comes to your mind, what is this direct method, by the way? Yes, direct method. Maybe you would recall that direct and indirect narration. Alright, okay, fine. Again, direct method, of course, a method in which a foreign language is taught directly, in fact. Clear? It means that when I say that foreign language is taught directly in the class, which means that, what does it mean? That translation is, alright, excluded, no more translation. Because, see, the name says. And you might be thinking that when did we start this method? Of course, 19th century, in fact, early 19th century, by one German, Frank and Sauvier. These two people have done a lot in introducing this method, and that this method, in fact, is a better method for foreign language teaching. And again, we call it natural method. By the way, why we call it natural method? Okay, alright. Students, we call it natural method because it follows the natural process of learning a language. Like, you see, how did you acquire your L1? L1 stands for language 1. Good. The first language that you have learned. It could be Pashto, Saraiki, Hindko, alright, or any other? Punjabi. Fine, students. Well, okay, so this is one, the natural, because it follows the natural process of learning a language, right? So we also call it the natural method, right? Natural way is, how do we learn? Do we learn rules then? No. Alright, so since we don't learn rules, because the language that you speak you have learned by listening to your siblings, parents, society and all that. So over there nobody taught you rules, but you speak that language, you speak it very well. So is the case here, that when you have to teach a foreign language, so direct method talks about this, that directly you teach that language, you use that language. Fine. So again, once you teach that language directly, in fact, by following that natural process of learning language, and again, example, you might be confused at what is the natural process. Again, my dear students, I tell you that when the way you have acquired, even some researchers use both word acquire and learning for language one as well. But some researchers say, well, that acquisition, that word acquire, that we use only for first language or language one. However, every second language that you learn, we use the word what? Learn, in fact, L-E-A-R-N. So here, but that why it is a natural process, because if I ask you, how did you acquire your first language? What did you do? Yes, you learning skills. How? But how? What? Have you ever thought? Okay, students, yes, other day in our lecture, we might have discussed that the natural process means that, the way a child acquires, the child listens first, input, then he tries to speak, and then he tries to read, and then he also writes. See, it's a natural process of learning a language. So that's why we call it natural, because we learn, and rather we teach this language directly in the target language. So it means that L1 is no more out. So it means there is no memorization. Fine. And again, what? See, explicit rule-based teaching is there. The natural system of language learning, in fact. Alright. So in natural system of language learning, there are no rules. Does not involve memorization. And again, the rules which are in use, explicit use, in fact, are important. That we learn by using a language, in fact. Anyway, so the point is that this meanings, of course, I talked about what is meaningful learning, in fact. Over there, you see on GTM, there was no meaningful learning. But here, once you learn a language through direct method, your learning becomes more meaningful. Why it becomes meaningful? Because you learn, right, by using it. So once you learn a word or expression by using it, so it means, right, that learning is a meaningful learning. You can use that word in different situations because you have learned it how to use. You have learned that word how to use it. So meaning is connected directly with the target language without going through the process of translating into the student's native language. The slide is there in front of you. This is what? The direct method. Right? What is the method, students? See? That meaning is connected directly with the target language without going through the process of translating. So there is no translation. No use of what? MT mean mother tongue. And of course mean why? That I told you earlier that, well, it's why another question is that why we focus on this method and why there was a need of this method. I mentioned, my dear students, that no two languages have same commonalities. Languages, they are different. I gave you example of sentence pattern, in fact. And I gave you example, of course, on Urdu and English, that two languages, yeah, they have a different sentence pattern. So, again, there are two terms are there, the positive transfer and the negative transfer, in fact. Positive transfer is that if one language has a sentence structure, a pattern that has the same pattern in the target language. So in this way your L1 might help you, and we call it positive transfer, for example. Like some sounds in our language that are there in English language, for example, ta, we have ta in Urdu also. So we can easily pronounce this ta sound. Clear? Similarly, da, because we have, of course, these sounds in our language, da. But the point is, if there is no example, see in Arabic example, see in Arabic language there is no pa sound. So whenever in an Arabic speaking, in fact, talks about Pakistan, he says Pakistan. Clear? Because that sound is not in the Arabic language. I hope you understand. So there, positive transfer when L1 helps you. Because most of the cases, that L1 does not help in the learning L2. So this is called negative transfer, in fact. I hope you understand. In other words, it means that L1 interferes in learning that target language. So dear students, this one is the point, of course, that the native language interferes with the target language. Fine, and we also call it negative transfer. I hope you understand. Any confusion? Right? Good. So again, the very important point of this method is that this method focuses on realistic, everyday communication. That's what we need. Because we have to communicate with the hotel manager, we have to communicate with the driver, we have to communicate with the banker, we have to communicate with the teacher, we have to communicate with our mother, we have to communicate with your virtual concerts, we have to communicate with with a vendor, with the mechanic, auto mechanic, in fact. Yeah, you understand? So it's different. And that's why this is a very good point that, well, this method in fact focuses on what? Realistic, everyday, what? Communication. A dialogue, for example, between a teacher and a student. Of course, a group discussion among the students. Clear? So, definitely on different topics they can talk about. See? So, this is what this method, of course, talks about. See? A realistic situation. Realism is there, in fact. And that is really useful for learning a target language. That once you learn a language by being in a situation where you have to use that situation, in fact. And of course, definitely for an effective learning of this, of course, application of this method, we need to expose ourselves, we need to visit different situations to have know-how of that particular situation. For example, you are at the post office, you are at the airport, you are at the railway station, you are at the immigration office, wherever you are, in fact. So this is the method which in fact focuses on realistic everyday communication. So that's why, which method? Direct method. Fine? You see, in direct method, so far what have you learned, students? No interference of L1. Directly, in fact, what? Learning which language? Target language. Good, students. So move on. Clear? Fine? Very good. Again, that, of course, the proceeding, the class, you read this? Yes, of course, in that chapter. Read it. A class proceeding is there, and number of students are 30, of course, and 1 hour, 3 days a week. And it is, of course, in Italy, in fact, we have taken it as a model class, of course, and the level is lower intermediate. My dear students, these things you should keep in mind, because once we'll move on, we have to make a lesson plan. So in lesson plan, we have to keep this in mind, at which level are you teaching and how many students are there, what is the duration of the class, and how many hours you meet a week, and where are you, what is the setting, in fact. I hope you understand. Good. So, and again, right, level is low intermediate, and the class outlook, what is it? Peripheral learning. What is peripheral? Around you, surroundings, in fact, right? So peripheral learning, see, there are charts, there are maps, there are pictures, there are boards, and all that. So, right, definitely, when you see around a chart, does it help you? Yes, it does. Because every day, for example, if you see that chart for a week, and you see, you get to know things, for example. Like, you visit different departments of a university, you visit, a department of, for example, Italian department, or French department, a Chinese department. See, you find different pictures there, in fact, plus their culture. Fine? When you see a Pakistani school, you will find what Minaret Pakistan, for example. You might see Shah Faisal Mosque as well. Similarly, every country, see? So there are, right? These peripheral learnings are there, some milestones are there. So these milestones talk about that country. Either the country is disciplined, the country is, fine. So this is way, but we say that whenever there is a class of this direct method, so you have, the outlook of the class is, with full of realia, or we call it visual aids. In other words, teaching aids also we can call it, the aids that help you in learning. So this is what the class is there, dear students. Fine. So here there is a visual, there is an image, you can see that here. Well, see, there is a direct method of language teaching. What is there? There are different, see, activities are being done. What? Sometimes you bend, you draw. Is that clear? So what is it, by the way? Right? So you learn through demonstration. Fine. So again, this is another important activity in direct method, that the teacher teaches concepts through demonstration. In fact, he demonstrates things, of course. So teacher should be a good demonstrator as well. So here is what, as you have seen, what is it? Reading aloud. Yes, loud reading, really important, of course. Why it is important? What is reading, by the way, students? You know that? Reading? What is it? All right. Read. What? The text reading? Yes, students, it's a process. Process of what? Reading is a process of recognition, association, and comprehension. Three things. I repeat for you, students. Recognition, association, and comprehension. Recognize means you try to recognize. You know a script, for example, and then you associate that, link it with your registers, what you know, and then you try to comprehend that. So this is what reading process. And in this method, reading is loud. Loud reading is there. And what student read the passage turn-wise, in fact. Right? Ali reads 5 lines and then moves on to Zahid. Zahid reads 5 lines, a paragraph. And if there is a dialogue, so the two students share the dialogue. Maybe Ali becomes that student and the Zia the teacher. If it is a dialogue between the teacher and students, or it's a dialogue between a waiter and a customer, so again, you see, one student acts as a waiter and one student acts as a customer. So again, they read that. So reading loud is important. Again, my dear student, when you read loud, what happens? You listen to yourself, right? So that's important. Again, if you see in the class proceeding, we have the title, what? Looking at the map. What is USA Geography? Right? This is, of course, the topic which is being discussed in this English class. So once you read loud, you improve your pronunciation. And again, teacher, you see that teacher corrects pronunciation. If a student mispronounced a word, so teacher corrects. Mind you, so pronunciation is what? Given due importance. I won't compare here again. We'll have a separate session on that, right? Between comparison between the grammar translation method and direct method. But here, the pronunciation, the teacher corrects the pronunciation if he finds a problem with that. Again, there are act outs. Right? Play, of course. The teacher also acts in the class, right? And he makes students act. If there is a situation where the acting is required, so students act. They take, their role and they try to act. Again, it's of course, it's a natural way. Because in our society, in our day-to-day conversation, day-to-day communication, we have to act at different situations. So that is a real learning. Again, realistic learning. Fine. And then the reading example. What is the nature of reading, in fact? Choice can be open, of course. You can take passage from any source. Like in this, of course, the lecture, the chapter, you've seen it is from a map reading, for example. But you can take passage, my dear student, from anywhere. You can take passage from, of course, history of target language, everyday lives of target language, culture, and all that. In fact, so and again, the point is that dialogues, of course, are based on what? Situational use of target language. So dear students, this is what mean loud reading is there. Students read, in fact, fine, and they read, they take their turns in reading, and there's a dialogue, fine. What they do? They act out that dialogue, and reading passage can be taken from any source. Again, in the last method we saw, from a literary passage, but here choice is yours, open. Fine, but again, the passage that you take, being a teacher, you must know what is it about. Before you use that method in the class, you should know it. Fine, students? Clear? Fine? So, loud reading. Here, what is it? Meaning building, in fact. Very good point of this method, that in this method, what the teacher, what? Tries to build meaning, in fact. I mean, what? This is what meaningful learning, in fact. Alright, students. So we saw that, well, what happens, the meanings are built. Fine? Because why? It is that in the absence of L1, because there is no mother tongue in this way. So what teacher does, he ensures the meaning building through what? What does the teacher do? Ask question. And there are questions in front of you. Are you looking at the map of Italy? No. And again, the teacher asks question and he needs full answer, full sentences. He does not encourage one word answer. He does not encourage yes, no answer. He wants a full sentence in reply to a question. Again, students, what is that? Yes, the teacher lets students ask questions from each other. It's very, again, the teacher encourages interaction. There is communication, in fact. So again, to this way, once the student learn to use the word, so they build their meaning, in fact. Again, a very good, of course, practice in the method. Then what else? I mean, there are illustrations are there. Which learning we call it? We can call it visual learning, in fact. Right? Students see, they view things. What they see? Charts, pictures, maps, and all that. Fine? And then use of realia. What is realia, by the way? What is realia? You can call it teaching aid, for example. Right? Of course, that realia, see, is used in the class. Maybe, for example, if teacher talks about the pen, so he shows them this is a pen. He talks about the lead pencil, so he shows students a lead pencil. Maybe he draws pencil on the board, in fact. So this can be. Like in this way, that what teacher does, he draws that. What? What does he draw? That mountain ranges, in fact. So therefore, the use of board is also there. But again, he does not write something on the board and students copy. No, he draws. Again, the teacher should be good at drawing as well. So then he uses what? He makes student practice, in fact. Practice new words through full. For example, the student asks, what does the word mean, between mean, in fact? And they say, yes, you are sitting between Ali and Zia, for example. And Uzma is sitting between, between Alina and Uzma. I hope you understand. So this way the teacher proceeds that, well, he tries, to inculcate the use of a word in the students. This is, of course, important thing, that once the student learn to use a word, so they become what? Encouraged, in fact. Again, pronunciation practice, my dear students. Yeah, you have seen that, well, when a student mispronounces a word, what does he do? Mispronounces a word, M-I-S. So the teacher corrects him. Fine, a politician, for example, and the teacher, for example, teacher corrects him. The student says word democracy, teacher corrects him. Again, but how teacher, in fact? Teacher, in fact, doesn't tell him that, but teacher, of course, asks, is it democracy or democracy? Is it aristocracy or aristocracy? And the student gets the meaning that, well, something is to be corrected. Again, once the teacher helped them, then everybody repeats that in chorus. In chorus mean together, they all. In chorus you might have done your drama, in fact, the classical dramas. So again, pronunciation is emphasized, right? Of course, and pronunciation is given due importance and considered as an essential part of communication, very important. Again, self-correction. The student, of course, the teacher watches for the errors, right? Watches the errors made by the students while speaking, and then through different ways, what he does, he in fact motivates students for self-correction, in fact. What the teacher does, he repeats that statement, fine, and maybe that wrong statement, but with that with a questioning tone, and the student gets the message, well, something has been done wrong, and they try to overcome that. And of course you can see that, see what is the ocean in the west? You see, now what is the ocean? Then on the west or in the west? Oh sir, yes sir, in the west. So in this way correction is done, my dear students. Again, of course there are some exercises as well. Fine. So then here is what oral practice of prepositions, like you have this in, on and all that. See, and there is a question also. Example, where is your book? My book is on the table, right? So teacher in fact what? Through use, he in fact helps students in, of course, prepositions. And then students, once they practice, and the students there and then start producing, start making in fact good sentences. So this is what the way that the teacher in fact helps students, motivates students, right? I mean, how motivates for making sentences, and they successfully in fact do it, students, of course. So this is what mean the exercise there, that how written work is done, that how written exercises are done, of course, mean that once they discuss things, right, students come to know the use of prepositions, right, by using it repeatedly, and then of course at the end the teacher can give them those prepositions, the fill in the blanks, and they can easily do it in fact, because they have learned the use, right? And at any situation, of course, if you give that statement in different ways, student would be able to do it in fact. So again, rules of preposition in fact may not be taught at all. Implicit grammar teaching, clear? There is no explicit, but through use people in fact, students what? Learn grammar. In other words, grammar is taught inductively. What is inductive teaching in fact? Yes, student. Inductive teaching is when a lot of sentences are given, and then students are expected to infer that rule from that. For example, if the teacher gives them 15 sentences that Ali works and he works and all that, so at the end maybe he asks, here what is the common sentence? Then student know, well, we have third person with he, and we need to put s or es in fact. So this is what, you see, a meaningful learning is there. How vocabulary is very important part. How vocabulary is practiced. So what? Teacher asks questions about the map and target language and ensure the students apply in full sentences. Fine. And again, here mean the student, and he encourages students to use different words in fact. And of course, if the student, right, uses a wrong word which the teacher thinks, then again the teacher asks questions. By the time the teacher comes, the student learns the right use of the word, and there is no memorization. Fine. There's no sentence formation in fact for new words. This is what mean vocabulary is taught in fact. So how in fact students don't memorize mindless cramming. Why? They don't memorize word list. They don't memorize synonyms, antonyms in fact. What they do? They see the use in fact. They don't memorize word meanings and all. They don't memorize what? Grammar rules. So no memorization. I told you earlier, my dear students, that well, in this method there is no memorization of the word list, no memorization of synonyms and all that. So move on in fact. Am I going fast? Shall I be slow down? Okay, alright, fine students. So my dear students, again the teacher gives dictation in fact. What is dictation? When the teacher reads a passage and the students write. What happens in dictation? Yeah, when you listen to the teacher, again you improve your pronunciation, very good. And when you write, again you improve your structure, that written of course. So dictation has many uses in fact. It helps you what? See that it also, example, dictation improves your listening. That when you listen to it the teacher, because he reads for you and you write, so you improve your listening also, you improve your writing also, right? And also you improve your pronunciation. So teacher gives dictation, and again, the topic is a relevant topic to the one we have covered in fact. Again, follow-up activities are there. Which activities? Paragraph writing about the major geographical features of the United States, for example, And then discussion on the proverb, time is money, fine, talks about what? The culture of America, and then entire week's agenda, example, based on life of Americans, their geography and all that. So then this is what these are some following up activities are there. So dear students, today what did we talk about? You have a problem that the last 10 minutes I discussed things quickly, huh? Alright, you're right. Okay, in the next lecture I'll review these things again for you and think things would be clear to you. Today, my dear students, what we talked about, first of all, we talked about flaws in GTM. Alright, we talked about flaws. What are the flaws in grammar translation method? You remember that? Then we moved on to direct method of teaching, of foreign language teaching. So in direct method we talk about what? Directly language is taught, in fact. And then we saw a proceeding of a class, that what happens in this method, that direct, there is no interference of what? Language 1. Directly the target language is taught to the students. How? Through activities, through what? Demonstrations. Fine. And the teacher what? He in fact encourages motivation. The teacher encourages interaction. The teacher in fact works on pronunciation. Fine. So that student would learn that language. So this is what we have covered in this lecture. And then of course we talk about some techniques of the method. So in this next lecture, of course, we'll talk about more on the method, that what is in fact direct method of foreign language teaching. With this, any question? No question. Fine. Alright. So just I want you to read this chapter from your text on direct method, and then if you have any question, you can write that question and you can ask me the next class. Thank you very much. See you in the next lecture. I thank you all.